And then let's go into it a little bit with regards to Parliament. So we got to, work's got to continue during this crisis situation. And I know that House of Commons has resumed, where we're back to work, but there was some contention upon how it was going to function, and there's still contention upon that. So talk about why your party is not really liking how the function is going to occur as it stands now.
Well, it's a minor disagreement about details. We believe that Parliament should sit 2 days a week rather than just 1 day a week. And the reason is the following. Parliament is essential. At the end of the day, in our system, in our society, we have three fundamental principles on which everything is based. One is the rule of law, the other are human rights and freedoms, and the third is our democratic system, our parliamentary system of government. And it's now been 5 weeks since we've had a regular sitting of the House of Commons. Literally $184 billion has gone out the door in emergency sessions, and we need to ensure that the opposition is there to ask the questions of the government. Democracies have long proved that when there is an opposition, the government does a better job of saving lives and saving livelihoods. And so we're simply asking that about 30 MPs go to Ottawa for 2 days a week rather than 1 day a week to ask questions of the government to make sure that Canadians are informed about what's going on. For example, very simple questions like, are the new emergency benefits supporting everyone? Because we're hearing that some Canadians, some businesses are falling through the cracks. Another question is, many seniors are isolated and feel left behind. What are we doing to ensure that vulnerable seniors are being taken care of? Another question that needs to be asked, why were so many masks and gowns disposed of only several months ago? And why was there no plan to replenish the national stockpile? These are the kinds of questions that the opposition needs to ask the government in the House of Commons. We can only do that if we can sit 2 days a week. And that's exactly what the negotiations are going on about right now.
Well, it's my understanding too, though, that the hope is to also set up some virtual sessions, and if you look down, even down to the provincial and municipal level, like our municipalities here in across Halton, in fact, are doing a virtual model. They're doing their regular council meetings virtually. They're coming together in a virtual way. Why does that not work for you federally?
We're open to looking at virtual sessions, virtual sittings of Parliament, but there are technical challenges to overcome. Many of our MPs do not have access to reliable broadband internet that would allow them to connect. It's a vast country with 338 MPs. Many of them live in regions of the country where there is no reliable broadband access. But setting that aside, I'm sure these technical hurdles can be overcome. At the end of the day, there's nothing that can replace a sitting of Parliament. The Liberals know this. That's why the Liberal government has proposed that we sit 1 day a week. We're simply saying, look, if we're going to come to Ottawa for 1 day a week, let's make it 2 days a week. I don't see what the difference is between meeting on just a Wednesday or meeting on a Wednesday and a Thursday to hold the government accountable. We can do it in a way that respects social distancing guidelines. I went up for 2 emergency sittings in the last several weeks where we had 30 MPs in a chamber that can hold 338 MPs. So 90% of the seats were vacant. That allowed us to respect the social distancing guidelines. We operated on a skeletal staff of only essential staff. Fewer than 50 staff were present to run the entire operation. And so we respected the social distancing guidelines that health authorities have recommended, while at the same time ensuring that there was greater accountability for the government. I'll just give you one example of why in-person sittings are so important. It was only several weeks ago that the government proposed essentially to suspend Parliament for almost 2 years and to give the PMO the extraordinary power to tax and spend without parliamentary approval to the end of 2021, the end of next year. But because we were in Ottawa in session, we were able to say no to that proposal and say to the government, we'll grant you that extraordinary power to the end of September of this year for a 6-month period, but not for almost 2 years. So that's why Parliament needs to sit. We need to ensure that the government's doing the best job it can to save lives and livelihoods. And that only can happen if the House of Commons is sitting and the opposition is able to hold the government account. I tell people, during the Second World War, during the Blitz in London, The UK Parliament sat throughout the Blitz. It sat during wartime. And it did so because people understood the importance of accountability and ensuring that the government was doing the best job it could, and that can only happen if the opposition is in the House of Commons holding the government to account.
Let's move on to now the things that you want to talk about, the things that make you want to go in there twice a week. And I know there are some priorities that the other parties are looking to focus on as the House of Commons resumes. What is your party's focus on?
I think we're focused on two things. First, we're focused on saving lives. We need to reduce the spread of COVID-19. We need to ensure that we have enough ventilators, personal protective equipment, enough stockpiles to save lives. We have to ensure that our emergency rooms and critical care beds across the country can handle the patients that are coming in with severe cases of COVID-19. That's the number one job at hand, is to save lives. The second focus that we're looking at is saving livelihoods. We need to ensure that we minimize the economic damage of this pandemic and ensure that once we get out of this pandemic and through this pandemic, that small businesses, employers, employees have jobs to go back to. Millions of Canadians have lost their jobs in recent weeks. The government has put in place emergency benefits, and we have to make sure that those benefits are going to the right people. We have to make sure that people who are falling between the cracks are being looked at and looked after. And we also have to start talking about what a reopening of our economy looks like.
Okay. I have one question for you, and I don't know, I'm not sure if you can answer this at this point, but there has been discussion with, all this going on in terms of manufacturing goods. Of course, we're currently doing that now to, especially the essential goods that we need. Could this spark an interest post-COVID-19, post-pandemic, to bring home some manufacturing, in particular essential goods, to make it right here at home? So should something like this happen again, we have our own stock in place without having to order internationally or dealing with any concerns or issues with trade, things like that.
Well, I think these are all questions that we're going to have to debate and look at once the pandemic is over. But, I'd note this, we don't necessarily have to manufacture things here in order to be prepared for a pandemic. I think what's more important is ensuring that our national stockpiles are up to date and fully warehoused. That to me is the bigger issue. It's not whether or not the product was produced here, it's whether or not our national stockpiles are up to date and fully warehoused. And clearly that was not the case, both at the federal and provincial level. So there's different ways to tackle this problem to ensure that next time we're better prepared for an outbreak or health emergency like the one we're going through right now.